Pretoria or South Africa who is with us here, you are welcome. And all the other dignitaries, participants here, and I know there are a number of diplomatic corps, and we should not forget, I can't see him where he's seated, the Dean of Diplomatic Corps, Ambassador Basaeki. Where is he? He was inside. Is he outside? Dean. Dean should come here, sit in front here. You are all come here in front. The Dean of Ambassadors. Yeah, you can take. I will remove that name. There's some. I know there's a name somewhere, but you just sit there. They will correct the names. So all the ambassadors present this morning, and any other brothers, sisters, and friends, I am delivering this speech today with a lot of joy in me, a lot of joy in all the MPs in this room, that after a long time, our official opening is being delivered by the chairperson of the African Union, chairperson of the Assembly of Heads of States on this continent. It's a very, very, very great day. In fact, if I were to ask you, Your Excellency, if I were to ask our members of parliament and the secretariat if they can remember when the opening of parliament was presided over by the chair of the African Union, when was the last time? I think all of you don't even remember. We have tried almost every year. We have not been able to attract a person of your caliber and at that level on the continent. So, Your Excellency, we want to take time to express our deepest gratitude that you only came into office as chair of the union in February. And if we count about 3 months, 2 months, within 2 months, you have created a space for Pan-African Parliament. Pan-African Parliament needs you a lot. We need you as chair of the union for us to move forward. Our mandate, Your Excellency, is a loaded mandate as a parliament. Like any other parliament, we oversee the programs and the policies of the union. In the protocol, it actually says Pan-African Parliament shall ensure the implementation of the programs, policies of the union. And in doing that, it says, as part of our mandate, we should ensure the full participation of African peoples in the economic development and integration of the continent. And then it encourages us to also promote principles of human rights and democracy, that we should ensure as a parliament, ensure good governance, transparency, and accountability in the member states. And then we should familiarize the peoples of Africa with the objectives and policies aimed at integrating the African continent within the framework of the establishment of the African Union. And that we should ensure promotion of peace, security, and stability, and contribute to a more prosperous future for the peoples of Africa by promoting collective self-reliance and economic recovery, facilitate cooperation and development in Africa, strengthen continental solidarity and build a sense of common destiny among the peoples of Africa, and facilitate the cooperation among regional communities and parliaments on this continent. Of course, to date, we do not have legislative powers who could perform these functions much better, more effectively, if we had legislative powers. When the PAP was launched in 2004, the member states said, both in the protocol and the rules, they said, after 5 years, that is from 2004, which means by 2009, member states will meet in a conference. They will meet in a conference to decide on the issue of PAP becoming legislative. So this should have happened in 2009. No conference took place. Instead, a process in this chamber started to amend the protocol, which is now called the Malabo Protocol, which was approved by member states for ratification in 2014. To date, since 2014, Your Excellency, I know we have the 15th member only last week or so, which is the Central African Republic being the 15th member, 15 ratifications since 2014. We are supposed to garner 28 ratifications for the protocol to get into force. But if you look at the rate at which member states are ratifying, it may take more than 50 years or never to get to 28. I think as the chairperson of the union, this is a matter that we need to visit and say what is happening. And in our operations, Your Excellency, you know, Pan-African Parliament only came in 2004, yet the OAU had been born in 1963. So other organs were born earlier. And there was no parliament, there was no court for the union. So the court and the parliament only came in 2004. Now, before 2004, there were other organs who were playing the role of a parliament. Things like overseeing, doing that. Now, when we came on board up to now, we still have a problem of what we may call TAF conflicts. And I want to say the PRC chair is here. Sometimes lack of clarity what the parliament oversight should do and what PRC should do. We believe with the reform program, I think we may cross that one. This year, in view of our mandate, we are also as a parliament pursuing vigorously the theme, the AU theme of 2023, which is accelerating implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area. I can assure you, Your Excellency, that this parliament is fully aware that economic development for Africa, the issues of youth unemployment, the issues of infrastructure development can only be achieved through the success of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And on our program this week, during the session, next week we have a 2 days conference where members of parliament will debate and contribute on the issue of ensuring that we succeed. And within that, the gender and youth dimension is going to be part of that 2-day AFCTA discussion. Because we don't want to exclude women or the youth in all the development agenda that we are doing. Now, 2063 agenda, or Agenda 2063, is yet another challenge that as a parliament we are seized with. And we have to ensure that laws, trade laws, are harmonized in order to move forward, including other programs of Agenda 2063. Now, the issue of democracy and governance, which I want also to link with the issue of unconstitutional changes of government on this continent. I think we have to think twice about our continent. At a time when we thought we were succeeding, the coups are becoming a thing of the past. In the last 2 years or so, we have gone backwards. And the current situation in Sudan is good testimony that I think we need to pull up our socks as Africa. With this issue of military taking over, I think it is eluding us. And we need really to sit down. And this is the forum, a parliament of this nature with membership from all the countries, I think should take these issues seriously. And we will find time during this session to look at issues of peace and security on the continent and why we continue to worsen on the continent. And we will be joined by the Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security from Addis to integrate these issues. But I tell you, it's a very difficult situation. I posted on our group of MPs yesterday, I think for the second time, when we were celebrating Women's Day. And I said we are celebrating Women's Day, but the issue of conflict and instability on the continent is taking the gains of women again away from the women. There was a picture that I showed Your Excellency. A woman riding a donkey with a child behind on her back and another on her front. And another woman again riding another donkey, running away from the war. And so when you celebrate Women's Day, then you say, so conflict is the bad thing. Election observations is another challenge on the continent because, the parliament, which is the beacon of democracy, is an institution. In our election observation missions, we are now just a small appendage to the AU missions, where there are 50 observers, maybe PAP will have 5 only. Yet, not less than half of an election mission should be composed of members of parliament because they are the real practical players in that area. But we are not, it's an issue that we need to continue looking at, among other issues. There is the issue of food security on this continent, worsened by the Russia-Ukraine conflict, so that our inputs, fertilizers, cannot come in the continent at the rate that we expect. Your Excellency, We also want to talk about our own heads of state and the way we are invited by some countries as a continent, that Africa come here, China come to America, come to Turkey, come to Japan. In all the assessments we hear that there's nothing much coming out of those gatherings. But also, we are also a bit unhappy with the treatment our heads of states face when they attend these conferences. They are put in buses and all that, but they go back home without anything after all. Those monies that are promised never come after all. It is a bit demeaning on the status and integrity of our heads of state and our countries. We may be poor, but not the way we are being treated. I think we should organize ourselves and move better. Your Excellency, this parliament is strong. Of course, between 2020 and 2022 June, the parliament was off business. It was like closed for business. First of all, it was COVID-19 from 2020 to 21. 21, it was about conflicts over rotation. We disagreed, there was acrimony, and then we came back June 2022. We came back in a very vibrant manner, very united manner as MPs. We abandoned the old divisions. We embraced rotation. And we are happy. And the rotation has gone to even levels of committees. And there is fairness in the way power is distributed at PAP. And happy, we designed a program, we had workshops, we reinvented ourselves now. We have reinvigorated, creating direction, what we should do, values and everything. Good parliament. And even outsiders have seen the difference. But the problem we have is that we have no money. We have no money. The budget is empty. We have no money even for committees to meet, Your Excellency. In a parliament, when committees cannot conduct business, when committees cannot go to where things are happening to see for themselves as MPs, evaluate, assess, and come and report, and we come to you, the Assembly of States. In that case, that parliament is basically dysfunctional. We have appealed for budget. And I'm happy the chair of the PRC is here. We had a budget of 36 million annually, which was reduced to 11 million now from 36. And because of that, we are almost closing the gap between the budget for staff and the budget for other operations. The budget is almost equal to payment of staff remunerations only. We remain with money insufficient even for one session. One session costs 1.3 million. Currently, we are given 900,000. We can't even meet. But more so, meet for what? We meet when committees have been out there on the continent and come and report. So we meet without committees doing anything. And this is a big issue, Your Excellency. We need the support of the PRC, the subcommittee on budget. Surely we need to be seen differently. And I told them the other day in the PRC that PAP is like a new car. Reconditioned, new tires, new everything, new steering. But the tank is empty. It cannot be driven anywhere. It cannot go anywhere. It needs fuel. PAP has no fuel to move forward. So, Your Excellency, in view of this problem, we have another strange institutional situation in the AU, where everywhere in the world there is no parliament that does not pay sitting allowances to MPs. It is only this one. The whole world, it's only this parliament which does not pay sitting allowances. The only one in the world. The whole world, nothing. Why are we treated like this? Why are we treated like this? Even I say, even the bureau does not get anything per month. Nothing. Whereas all other organs get paid. All other organs get paid, but PAP no. In PAP nothing. I think that has to be reviewed. We even used to have medical cover. When MPs are here, they have covered medically. This was removed. This was removed. Probably we need more time with you. But one headache is also coming out of recruitment. The new AU recruitment system, is blocking progress in the union. To advertise, it takes 1 year. Just to put a job advert. When they advertise to get us, then they will shortlist somewhere, we don't know. And then out of 300 applicants, they will give you 5. They say, these are the people that you should interview. Yet the rules say each organ should recruit its own staff. We are really in a very dire state. But before I conclude, I want to say, we are lucky, Your Excellency, that you are here. Because some of you may know, some of you may not know. Comoros used to be a country characterized with instability. Those who have been reading a lot, Comoros at one time had the highest rate of frequency of military coups at one time. Today, when Your Excellency, the President, Azali and Soumani, you came in, Comoros is now the most stable. The economy is improving. The quality of life of Morocco, the Comoros is improving. Now, we should appeal to you that being the chair of the union, can you use those skills that you have used in the Comoros to bring peace to the whole continent? Yeah, we are lucky because in your country you have done it. So let's end these unconstitutional changes of government on the continent during your tenure. And please, you tell them in Addis, and you also tell us sometime how you did it, what should be done on this continent. Surely we should clap again for His Excellency. Can we clap again for His Excellency? The MPs from Comoros, if we were to have time and say, one of them tell us, from Comoros, they would tell you that he's the best man we have had. There's now stability. I've said, if you go back in history, there's one time when Comoros experienced coups on this continent at a frequency higher than any other region or country. But that is now a thing of the past because of the President, His Excellency Azali Soumani. We look forward to working with you. When he arrived this morning at the airport, and the whole bureau was there to receive him, as I conclude, And I said this to President Ruto of Kenya 3 weeks ago when I met him. I said, you see, the problem we have also of leadership on the continent is that when the people get into office, they are no longer accessible. When people become heads of state, they are no longer accessible. They no longer know what is happening out there. Here, the team from Comoros were telling me, the MPs, that this president is a very down-to-earth person. And we saw it ourselves this morning at the airport. He arrived just before 4 a.m. Just before 4 a.m. And we were saying, oh, His Excellency is very tired. In French, fatigué. He was very tired. So, but then we needed to brief him. Either at the hotel this morning, when he is rested. So he said, Mr. President, it's too early. Now 4 a.m., you've been traveling. Maybe we brief you tomorrow when you come to pub. He said, don't worry, let's sit. Briefing, 4 a.m. We sat at the airport in the lounge to brief him. And we thought 15 minutes. But because he's very generous, we ended up taking almost 45 minutes. At 4 a.m., we briefed him, I spoke, all the bureau members spoke. That is the quality of presidential material we need on this continent. People who are prepared to listen. And some of you will become presidents in the future because the Papa has produced presidents. Please, when you become presidents, don't run away from the people. Don't run away from the people. Surely we are humbled. We spend 45 minutes. You never say, oh no, time is gone. Time is gone. We exhausted everything the way we like. Each one member of the bureau spoke, and he replied to us very down to earth, simple. Africa, if can have such a president, it can be better. We know some presidents that you can never see them, whether an MP or even ministers, for years. And that's why Africa is suffering. Africa is suffering. Anyway, let me end here. Let me end here. The Union, the chairing all presidents on this continent, is in this room this morning. I know he will say it when he takes the floor. He said, on this budget issue and the conditions of MPs, I am going to be your champion. That's what he said. He said, I am going to be your champion. Can we stand up for him? Can we stand up for him and clap? You can take your seats. Now, on this note, before our guest of honor delivers his speech, there will be some other presentations to make sure that we sweep the ground clean before he takes the floor. I'll start with welcoming remarks by Honorable Candid Mashengo Dlamini, the Deputy Minister of International Relations and Cooperation from the Republic of South Africa. You are welcome.
Your Excellency, President of the Union of Comoros, Mr. Azal Asuman, also Chairperson of the African Union, Honorable Chief Fortune Charumbira, President of the Pan-African Parliament, Honorable Speakers of the various African national parliaments, Honorable members of the Pan-African Parliament, Honorable members of the European Parliament, Your Excellencies, members of the African Diplomatic Corps, all distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to welcome you to South Africa on behalf of government and the people of South Africa. I want to specially acknowledge the presence of the President of the Comoros, His Excellency President Asuman, current Chairperson of the African Union. Honorable President, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the Pan-African Parliament has an extensive and impressive agenda which seeks to address common challenges across the African continent. Allow me to present my remarks on a few agenda issues. It is fitting that the PAP will host a summit on climate change and equity, particularly in view of the devastating floods in various countries, as well as extreme droughts, which have displaced people in different parts of the continent, leading to most people losing their livelihood, including women who bear the brunt of negative impact of climate change. These compound and ongoing challenges of inadequate food and hunger, occasionally by the geopolitics. While some progress has been made, especially for developing countries with the agreement on new loss and damage fund during the 27th Conference of the Parties, COP27, held in Egypt last year, which establishes a precedent of climate justice. However, more work needs to be done in operationalizing the fund and establishing the adaptation goals. At a continental level, we need to focus on the implementation of the African Union Climate Change and Resilient Development Strategy and Action Plan 2022-2023. We therefore hope that the PAP will continue its robust discussions on the report of the 27th Conference of Parties held in Egypt to continue building on the gain made and contribute to a common African position on these issues. The climate change model law is also a worth contribution to the arsenal of tools at the disposal of member states to address climate change, especially adaptation and mitigation, as well as just transition. Africa has the expertise through its universities and research institutions to assist and contribute in these endeavors. The South African government is especially encouraged by the deliberation of the PAP on the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area and its specific focus on the significant role that the Pan-African parliamentarians could play in its acceleration. You may recall that during the summit held on the 19th to 20th February this year, the head of state adopted 3 protocols to the agreement establishing the African Continental Free Trade Area, namely on competition policy, investment facilitate, the ratification of this protocol so that they may be integrated into national legislation, thus provide a legal basis on underpinning an active single market for Africa and meaningful market access across the ASFTA for the private sector, especially the SMMEs led by women and young entrepreneurs. It is also encouraging to witness the other initiatives undertaken by the different formations in our continent, such as the Women and Youth in Trade, ACFTA conference hosted in Dar es Salaam in September 2022, and the Business Forum hosted in Cape Town on the 16th of March 2023. Much remains to be done to address the infrastructure challenges, the inadequate freight and logistics at the borders to facilitate the free movement of goods, an issue that has been an impediment to intra-Africa trade. We also need to eliminate barriers to trade. The movement of people across borders is another challenge that we need to address, as it impacts on countries at different levels. Some countries have to deal with a huge influx of economic migrants in an irregular situation, as well as refugees, while others have large numbers of displaced persons. Most countries have policies in place as well as population registers, which are effective, while some are still struggling to establishing effective population registration system. It is also important that our countries can create decent jobs for our youth to stem the flow of migrants across the Atlantic Ocean, where huge numbers continue to perish. Another important issue on your agenda, Mr. President, is the model law on gender equity. Much as progress has been registered, particularly in ensuring the participation of women in decision-making and ensuring access to finance, a lot remains to be done. We therefore welcome this initiative, which will hopefully align with the strengthening of the African Union strategy on gender equity and women's empowerment to eliminate constraints hindering gender equality and women empowerment, so that women and girls may participate fully in economic, political, and social endeavors. Mr. President, we look forward to the outcome of the workshop on access to information, digital rights with the Internet Governance Forum, as well as proposal on how to integrate traditional medicine in African health system. Finally, I wish to reiterate on behalf of the government of South Africa, the government's commitment to provide all the necessary support to facilitate the work of the Pan-African Parliament. With these words, I would like to welcome all of you in South Africa and feel at home. Of course, you have brought cold. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. I now invite the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps for this continent here in South Africa, Ambassador Bakez.
I'm sorry, but the president never succeeds to pronounce my name properly. I'm André Zapayeke.
Zapayeke.
Can you repeat it together, please?
Zapayeke. From the Central African Republic.
I'm Ambassador of Central African Republic and Dean of the African Diplomatic Corps. Excellency, je parlais en français.
I will speak in French, Mr. President. Excellency, Mr. President of the Union of Comoros. President Azali Assoumani, Chairman of the African Union, Honorable President of the Pan-African Parliament, Chief Fortune Charumbira, Honorable Candide Masugo Dlamini, Vice Minister for Foreign Affairs and Cooperation of the Republic of South Africa, honorable members of the Bureau of the Pan-African Parliament, honorable members of the Pan-African Parliament, distinguished guests, Excellency, Mr. President, on behalf of the African Diplomatic Corps, made up of more than 50 ambassadors and high commissioners, I would like to wish you a warm welcome to the land of Madiba and to the Pan-African Parliament, and congratulate you very warmly, Mr. President, for the very good choice of the heads of states of Africa to have entrusted you with the chairmanship of the presidency of our Pan-African organization. Ambassadors and High Commissioners of Africa join you, Mr. President, and join the Pan-African Parliament during this month of Africa, the month of May, to celebrate the 60 years for the creation of the African Union, the OAU, and we are quite sure that your commitment to the full liberation of the continent and also your commitment towards peace and security on the continent will help us in achieving headway on this process. This month of May should encourage us to think of the founding fathers who have undertaken to struggle for the well-being of this continent. And I'm thinking here of Kwame Nkrumah, Gamal Abdel Nasser, Bourguiba, Kenneth Kaunda, Julius Nyerere, and many others. And I think, of course, and I let him at the end, to Nelson Mandela, the best present that Africa has ever offered to the world. And I would not like us also to forget Sam Nujoma, who is still alive, one of the great heroes of Africa. 60 years have elapsed since the creation of the African Union. Challenges are still very numerous for our continent, among which the full and total liberation of the Union of Comoros and other African territories which are still under foreign domination. The eradication of conflicts, the African integration, the issue of migration, the issue of food security. The African group commends the progress which has been achieved in some regions of Africa, and here I would like to refer in particular to the settlement of the Ethiopian conflict. And we would like to congratulate also our host country, South Africa, for facilitating the settlement of this conflict, and wish that in several other hotbeds of Africa that all these conflicts be settled, Excellency Mr. President. We do have a lot of work waiting for us, but with such a reinvigorated Pan-African Parliament under the presidency of its president who is here, under your leadership of the African Union, the very strong will of our member states and the vibrating dynamism of our youth, through that, we will make a great headway to the Africa we want and towards the setting up of the AFCFTA. What we would like is an Africa living in peace and a prosperous Africa, Mr. President. The Pan-African Parliament is the appropriate place to discuss these key issues because it is the institution which represents our populations and which could best express its needs. Mr. President, once again, welcome. And I would like to seize this opportunity in order to congratulate President of Parliament, Ms. Fortune Terumbira, for all what he is doing in order to reinvigorate our Pan-African Parliament. To all members of Parliament present here, I wish them a very good session and a very fruitful session and a very good month of Africa. A very happy month of Africa. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Your Excellency Ambassador Zapayeke. I repeat, Zapayeke, Ambassador Zapayeke. Yeah, we learn as we go. Thank you very much. And he's shaking hand with the Honorable Zingers, also from Central African Republic. Thank you very much. I now invite the President of, let's call the Speaker here, President of the Senate of Morocco, Honorable Nama Mayara. Or you should clap for him.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, and may His prayers be upon His Prophet and His companions. Your Excellency, President Azali Osmani, President of the United Republic of Comoros, President of the African Union, Your Excellency President Fortune Terumbira, President of the Pan-African Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, speakers and presidents of regional and national parliaments, distinguished members, I would like, first of all, to express on behalf of the Parliament of the Kingdom of Morocco, to express my thanks and gratitude to the President of Pan-African Parliament, my friend Fortune Terumbira, to have invited me to be part of this opening ceremony. This opening ceremony, which is taking place at very particular juncture of our world because of the geopolitical conflicts that are taking place and as part of very rapid changes and developments which increase our common challenges, and particularly at the level of peace, security and development. And we are all called upon, based on our role as representatives of our people, to set up a continental African agenda which will allow us to face up all the challenges in order to ensure join a common development and achieve the aspirations of our peoples. And I would like here to commend the Pan-African Parliament for organizing this session under the slogan of speeding up the achievement of the AFCFTA, which is in line with the theme of the African Union for the year 2023, which will make of our session a very important session in order to contribute in setting up the largest free trade area in the world, which is made up of 1.3 billion and a GDP of about $3.4 trillion, which will allow us to speed up our development and create a new value added and a competitive economy, which will pave the way for us towards new prospects and new mechanisms in the field of solidarity. And here I would like to remind you of the words of His Majesty King Mohammed VI in Kigali on the free trade area, when he said that the setting up of free trade area at the continent level will allow to contribute in harnessing the resources and mobilize innovation. It will also meet the needs of our youth in order to build up a very strong continent. Ladies and gentlemen, the encouragement of the AFCFTA is one of the main concerns of the Kingdom of Morocco in order for our continent to create more opportunities. This great project also will create a great number of jobs for the youth and also save also millions of Africa and allow them to contribute in development. In line with this model, my country has worked in setting up a model for common development through numerous integrating projects with several countries of the continent through scientific training and also the strengthening of food security and also the upgrading of natural resources. The Kingdom of Morocco is working in sharing good practices relating to economic and development programs through the strengthening of the bank institutions in several countries of the continent, which has allowed to increase trade of Morocco with other African countries by 9.5% annually. Concurrently with the raising of investments of Morocco in Africa through direct investment, particularly in the sub-Saharan region, which has made of Morocco the first investor, African investor in Africa. And in line with the spirit of solidarity, which is at the core of cooperation between Morocco and its African brothers, my country is investing in order to strengthen food security. Together with a group of African countries, is setting up agricultural strategies in order to achieve agricultural sovereignty and also open new markets. My country is working also through the Sharifian office to build up a value chain, which will allow Africa to have access to the largest quantities of fertilizers, because this will allow the changing of the present agricultural situation. One of the main mechanisms is to set up a platform in Ethiopia for the production of fertilizers estimated at 3.7 billion, which will allow us to provide Africa with fertilizers and export. And also, there will be also firms, plants, which will in Nigeria, which will be specialized in the production of fertilizers at the level of energy. Nigeria and Morocco are working in setting up a gas pipeline from Nigeria to Morocco in order to upgrade African resources and also rewrite the African map, and also in order to strengthen the competitiveness of African gas. And this investment is estimated at around $25 billion. And all these initiatives, ladies and gentlemen, represents the confidence of Morocco and its commitment for mutual assistance among all African countries. This is not a new option, but it is a creed which is at the core of the Moroccan policy. And this is in line also in line with its with the role that it has played in assisting the freedom movement fighters, and particularly the great hero Nelson Mandela, after he was trained in Morocco in 1962. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. President, the first words by His Majesty King Mohammed VI were the following: how beautiful today is when I'm coming back home after a long absence. How beautiful is this day while I'm dreaming with my heart and feelings, and take these feelings to the place I love, which is Africa, which is my home. These words are not only directed to Africa, but are also directed to the institution of Morocco in order to put African action in the heart of our concerns, and this through coordinating with national parliaments and regional parliaments. And here we do put our hands in your hands in order to face up our challenges. We do express also from this rostrum our support to all initiatives of parliaments which are aimed at thinking together and also championing all the multilateral projects in order to face up the challenges that are related to food security, and also in fighting terrorism and armed militias, and also the exploitation of children in armed conflicts, and also human trafficking, and also face up climate change and other issues which are of common interest in Africa and elsewhere. The determination of my country to cooperate with all sister countries encourages it in its strive to strengthen all the initiatives of the Pan-African Parliament, and mainly the strengthening of its role in the African action in order for us to achieve the slogan one for the African say to be heard. And this could only be achieved through the stability of all the countries of the continent, and this through a mechanism which will allow us to speedy development which would involve all the institutions of our continent. Ladies and gentlemen, we are quite confident that this session, through the election of its bureau, will achieve many of the aspirations of the national parliaments and will strengthen its action and its governance. The Parliament of Morocco will always be at the front of those who would sustain and support you in order to achieve this common action, while reiterating to the Pan-African Parliament and to its dear President of PAP, thanking him for inviting us to take part in this session. We are quite confident of the success that it will achieve through the recommendations that it will come out with in order to achieve security and peace. God bless Africa and its peoples, and thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Shukran, Jocelyn. Right, I can make a comment so that we smile a bit. You see, when Morocco is addressing, sometimes Sahrawi is simply saying, let's see if they will attack us. Now the speech was good, not talking about Sahrawi. That is very good and mature speech. Thank you very much. I now invite Honorable Modesta Bahati Lukwebo, Speaker of the Senate of DRC.
Excellency, Mr. President, Chairman of the African Union and President of the Union of Comoros, Mr. Azali Assoumani, Honorable President of the Pan-African Parliament, Chief Fortune Charumbira, Honorable speakers of parliaments who are present here, dear colleagues, honorable members of the Pan-African Parliament, Excellency, Madam Vice Minister for Cooperation of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. André Rizepayeke, Dean of the Diplomatic Corps, ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors and heads of diplomatic missions,
en vos titres et qualités respectifs,
note that agriculture only represents 20% of the GDP
alors
of
que cette
Africa,
dernière
while
dispose
Africa has more than 60% of arable lands in the world. Africa should be at the vanguard of the world for agricultural production. In order to achieve this goal, we must change our paradigm by overcoming some challenges, most particularly good quality governance, the struggle against corruption, and the promotion of transparency, commerce or trade through making ACFTA more operational. And there will be no justice without peace, and there no peace without justice. In this vein, I would like to seize this opportunity in order to call for the lifting by the international community of all kinds of sanctions that have been taken against Zimbabwe, one of our member states of SADC. To close my remarks, I would like to appreciate that the Pan-African Parliament has chosen to take this session the slogan for 2023, that is accelerating the implementation of the AFCFTA. And I would like to greet the holding of the third summit of Pan-African Parliaments on the policy, on the climate policy and equity. I have noted the financial difficulties which our parliament is facing, and it is the time to plead to the President of the African Union, who is present here, and that this request be introduced in May. That is the month of the anniversary of the African Union. I hope that the conditions of our parliament and members and its members will be improved thanks to through an allocation of additional budgetary resources which will allow you to achieve your goals. I thank you for your kind attentions.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Honorable Amason Jeffa Kingi, Speaker of the Senate of Kenya.
His Excellency Azali Assoumani, the President of the Union of Comoros and also the Chairperson of the African Union, His Excellency Honorable Chief Fortune Cherumbira, President of the Pan-African Parliament, the Honorable Candice Mashegu Dlamini, Deputy Minister, Republic of South Africa, Honorable Speakers of Parliaments present, Honorable Members of Parliament of the Pan-African Parliament, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. Indeed, I'm honored to attend and make remarks at the commencement of this session of the Pan-African Parliament. The Pan-African Parliament occupies a very special place in the affairs of the continent of Africa. As the legislative body of the African Union, the Pan-African Parliament exercises oversight and has advisory and consultative powers on all matters affecting the people of Africa. In its own unique way, PAP sets the agenda for all parliaments in Africa as they pursue a common legislative intervention on issues affecting the continent for seamless action. This session of the Pan-African Parliament takes place at the most ideal moment. It sets the pace for the third Pan-African Parliamentarian Summit on Climate Policy and Equity is set to take place tomorrow and the day after. At this summit, we will deliberate and seek to build consensus on the most ideal responses to a phenomenon that has gripped our collective psyche as a global citizens in the 21st century, that is climate change. Climate change and all its portents presently poses threats to humanity in dimensions and scale not contemplated before. In all parts of our planet, we are grappling with droughts of fierce magnitude, countered by storms of equal, if not more, ferocity and destructive tendencies, and rising ocean levels attributed to melting glaciers. In many parts of the world, livestock and wildlife deaths due to habitat dissemination, crops withering in farms, heightened malnutrition, especially in children, and rapidly drying rivers are becoming the order of the day. For humans and wildlife across the globe, the race for survival in the face of the adverse effects of climate change has never been more intense and disparate. Your Excellency, though it took the world citizens a while to appreciate the reality of the dire situation we are in, the telltale signs that all is not well in our globe have finally started us to awake. Across the globe, the call to mount a concerted efforts to mitigate the ramifications of climate change has been getting louder and more strident. The reality we have to countenance in this scheme of things is that we either commit to stand up and direct our energy and synergy in changing the situation, or lose hope and wait for our doom. For all good reasons, we cannot opt for the latter. It will amount to abdicating our duty and obligation to our children, grandchildren, generations to come. We owe them inheritance of a habitable continent and planet. This determination has been consistently and resoundingly proclaimed and articulated at past global engagements on climate change and global warming. Starting with the Montreal Protocol of 1987, the Kyoto Protocol of 1997, which was operationalized in 2005, the Earth Summit of Rio de Janeiro of 2012, the UN Climate Change Conference, COP21 in Paris, in Paris, in France, December 2015. This is the point. As a continent, we have to increasingly look inwards to come up with the best solutions that not only benefit our continent, but also ensure we uphold past agreements, pacts and treaties to which we are signatories as individual states and nations. As we are all aware, the Carbon Frame and Trade Framework initiated under the Paris Agreement commits countries that emit excess carbon to engage and work with counterparts that are green initiatives which reduce emissions whether in transport, manufacturing or power generations to meet required thresholds. As a continent where we still have relatively low carbon emissions as compared to the industrialized West, we must seize the wind of opportunity currently available to aggressively pursue commensurate carbon credit compensation. The Carbon Credit Framework will shield Africa's developing economies from shouldering the burden of mitigating climate change impacts. Your Excellency, to this extent, I wish to commend the African Union for formulating the African Union's Climate Change and Resilience Strategy 2022-2032, which stands out as our guide on matters climate action and green recovery. The strategy advocates for clarifying the role of the various AU structures and agencies involved in climate policy and for strengthening collaboration between the African Group of Negotiators, African Ministerial Conference on Environment, and the Committee of African Heads of State and Government on Climate Change. We in Kenya are privileged to have our President, His Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto, as the sitting coordinator of the Committee of African Heads of State and Government on Climate Change, and who has demonstrated his passion and concern for matters climate change. The President will actually be with us during the conference. President Ruto has spearheaded an elaborate climate response mitigation drive that has scaled up tree planting in Kenya to improve Kenya's forest cover from 10% to over 30% by planting 15 billion trees by 2032, amongst other initiatives. Your Excellency, sir, as I conclude, I must commend the AU for the well-structured and multi-layered interventions. The elaborate stakeholder engagement mechanisms are what we need for sustainable climate action in Africa. However, there is one critical missing link in this whole organizational setup that I'm compelled to bring to your attention, Your Excellency, and that is the role of parliamentarians. As the people's direct representatives and the institution charged with making laws in response to societal challenges, climate change included, parliamentarians have their work clearly cut out in this space. To put it into perspective, legislative intervention is mandatory when it comes to domestication of treaties and agreements that drive the climate change agenda. In this regard, I challenge the Pan-African Parliament to reach out to the AU Secretariat and initiate discussions on how we can rope in parliamentary caucuses to add impetus to our efforts. As a dynamic continent, we must fully embrace and utilize parliamentary democracy in every feasible way that guarantees us quick wins. Your Excellency, I thank you, and with these very few remarks, I want to conclude with one other issue that is extremely dear to all of us. That is conflict and instability in the region, in the continent. Your Excellency, all the very good things that have spoken before me here by my predecessors, and in addition to what I've just said, all these wonderful things that we've said here will only take place in a stable and peaceful continent. And therefore, Your Excellency, you being the chair of the apex body in this continent, as you sit with your brothers and sisters, the only way Africa will make strides, the only way Africa will develop is when Africa is stable and peaceful. Because peace and stability is the only ingredient that can easily push Africa to prosperity. And therefore, Your Excellency, if Sudan is hurting, Africa is hurting. If Eastern Congo, if Eastern DRC is hurting, Africa is hurting. There is no way Kenya will develop if its neighbor, Southern Sudan, is hurting. We cannot, Your Excellency, have a conflict go for months, go for years, and yet as neighbors, we sit back. What is happening in Sudan demands of Africa to drop everything and to push for an immediate peaceful resolution to the conflict in the Sudan. And parliamentarians, Your Excellency, can come in handy because parliamentarians are the direct representatives of the people. If they can go the width and length of their countries asking for votes, they can actually go the width and length of their countries asking for peace. So, Your Excellency, as the executive seats to deliberate on peace and stability of this region, please rope in the parliamentarians. They are partners in this journey, and they can lend the much needed help to secure peace and stability in this continent. Lastly, Your Excellency, let me just give my observation on the continental free trade area, that you and your brothers and sisters are pushing to make sure that the intra-trade within Africa happens seamlessly. Your Excellency, there are certain pillars that must be built, that must be put in place before we roll out the continental free trade area. Otherwise, we will be rolling out a continental free trade area that is anchored on sinking sand. Why am I saying this, Your Excellency? For Africa to fully realize the benefits under continental free trade area, there's certain bare minimum that we must put in place. The connectivity within this continent is extremely poor. The road connectivity, rail connectivity, air connectivity, telecom connectivity, power connectivity. Unless these ingredients are put in place, we may roll out a continental free trade area that may not give us the desired benefits. Your Excellency, I've just come to South Africa from Eswatini, the Kingdom of Eswatini. To get to the Kingdom of Eswatini, Your Excellency, I had to bypass the kingdom, fly all the way to Joburg, and then get another flight to go to Eswatini. While I was in Eswatini, Your Excellency, I couldn't make any calls to Kenya because the mobile telephony provider in Kenya has no corresponding connectivity with the mobile provider in the Kingdom of Eswatini. How can we do trade? How are we going to trade? Your Excellency, when I was in Angola last year, I saw the opportunities of Kenyan goods, Kenyan farm produce in Angola. But it is easier for a Kenyan farmer to take his mangoes to London than it will be to take his mangoes to Angola in Africa. So the structure of our continent is such that it is made to be so difficult to have intra-trade in Africa. And therefore, as we negotiate and eventually roll out the continental free trade area, Your Excellency, these are the basic infrastructural demands that we must put in place so that we can fully realize the intended benefits that will come up with the rollout of a continental free trade area. I thank you, Your Excellency, and may God bless Africa. Thank you.
Asante sana, Speaker of the Senate of Kenya. And I invite His Excellency Ambassador Joseph Sako, Africa Union Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy, and Sustainable Environment, representing His Excellency Musa Faki Muhammad, Chairperson of the African Union. Is not here. Then I invite the last before the guest of honor. This one is more interesting. Because his name, you know him, Honorable Senanu Koku Alupui, Second Rapporteur, Committee on Agriculture, representing the Right Honorable Sidi Mohamed Tunis of ECOWAS. You have the floor. He is lucky he's a member of PAP and a member of ECOWAS.
Excellence, Monsieur.
Your Excellency, Mr. Aziz Silani, President of the Comoros and President of the African Union Commission.
President of the Pan-African Parliament, Your Excellencies, honorable speakers, honorable members of the Pan-African Parliament, members of this august House, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm highly pleased to be representing Right Honorable Speaker of the ECOWAS Parliament, His Excellency Dr. Sidi Mohamed Tunis, at the opening of the second plenary session of the 6th Parliament of the Pan-African Parliament. Dr. Tunis could not be here due to other pressing national and regional engagements. However, he extends his sincere felicitations to the President and honorable members of the Pan-African Parliament and has asked me to deliver this solidarity message on his behalf. You may recall that at the founding of the OAU in Addis Ababa in 1963, the first President of the Republic of Ghana and a founding member of the organization, His Excellency Osajefo late Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, emphasized the need for economic integration and independence. In his words, we must recognize that our economic independence resides in our African Union and requires the same concentration upon political achievement. Consequently, our continent has come a long way in realizing this vision. The entry into force of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement brings us a step closer to this dream of a truly economically integrated continent. This is one of the goals under the African Union's 2063 agenda, aiming at achieving the Africa we want. The onus is therefore upon us to begin negotiating bilateral and multilateral agreement to boost intra-African trade and eliminate unhealthy trade barriers. Climate change has also become an issue of global concern and one of the biggest problems of our time. I'm glad that your session will dedicate time to address issues of climate change and our contribution in mitigating its effects. Climate change has negatively affected food and water security around the world. It has also caused substantial and irreversible damages to our ecosystem. This is why we must get involved in the discussion on this matter that threatens our future. Your Excellency, Chairperson of the African Union, Mr. President of PAP, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the crisis in Sudan, proliferation of terrorist activities in the Sahel, and migration across borders have also claimed the attention of the ECOWAS Parliament. We, together, have a responsibility to foster peace by supporting the structures and respecting the policies and protocols we already have. We therefore need collective and immediate actions to tackle these challenges and be mutually accountable to one another in our pursuit of solutions to our looming challenges. To conclude, let me assure you that the ECOWAS Parliament will stand by you in the pursuit of an economically integrated, peaceful, and secure Africa. This justifies the call for strengthening and deepening of the ties and collaboration between the PAP Parliament and the ECOWAS Parliament. We share in your goals and struggles, and I strongly believe that we are partners in the African Union agenda. It is my hope that you shall use this session and your many other engagements to deliberate on these issues and come up with ideas that will advance our collective goal of an integrated, developed, and prosperous Africa. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, brother, colleague in PAP. I think it's now warm enough to get the guest of honor on the stage. But I should announce that if we had the whole day tomorrow, we would have more speakers. So the others, I'll just announce their presence, that they are present, and the next time they will be given a priority. Even tomorrow, they can deliver a speech. We have a special guest whom we all know very well, who is around. He wanted to speak also, but because of time, we may not. He has become a minister and advisor in the office of the president, responsible for law, institutional, and political affairs. You are all Honorable Jibri. You own Honorable Jibri. Can you come over? Can you come inside? Come inside. Honorable Jibril is now a minister in Senegal. You can take a seat over there. Can take a seat over there. Yes, go sit over there. That's our Jubri War. Yes. You have seen him. Another special guest is Honorable Senator Gloria Ines Flores Schneider, President of the Parliament of Andini. Where is she? Come over also. Come to the front. Andini is Latin America. Latin America. I think there is another seat over there. You are welcome, Monto Obrigado. Let me now take this opportunity in a better way to invite the guest of honor. We have now reached the climax of this morning. Your Excellency, we are now, as someone said, apex. Dean Zabaek said the apex of Africa. So that we have now reached the apex of our continent, and that speech should deliver good rains to the continent. I've already mentioned a lot about him. but I'll just say I've been given by the team from Comoros, and they wrote this, that when you call him to speak, remind members of parliament that you should say one. Before his leadership, we had many coups in Comoros. In fact, Comoros may have experienced more coups than any other country in Africa. Now, since His Excellency President Assoumani ascended to power with a new constitution which enjoins rotation of power to each island, Comoros is now stable, safe, peaceful, and more developed economically. Under his leadership, Comoros has gained credibility from the IMF by being reclassified from a poor country to an intermediary country. Despite being a small country in size, under his leadership, Comoros is now well known by His Excellency, the President's investment in many areas, diplomatic relations, socio-economic development, including football. Let's clap. Your Excellency and Chair of the Union, I on behalf of these parliamentarians, humbly invite you to deliver your messages. Thank you.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen.
In the name of Allah, peace be upon the Prophet Muhammad, his family and his companions, Your Excellency.
Your Excellency, Honorable Chief Chirumbira, President of the Pan-African Parliament and dear brother, Vice Presidents of the Pan-African Parliament, Your Excellencies, all protocol duly observed. Permit me, first of all, to express on your behalf and that of my delegation and on my personal behalf our sincere thanks and our profound gratitude to the government and peoples of South Africa for the warm reception and hospitality which has been reserved to us since we stepped our feet of this beautiful brotherly country. Further, I would also like to thank the Pan-African Parliament through its President, His Excellency, Honorable Chief Fortune Chirumbira, for the honor which he has given to us by inviting me to participate in the opening ceremony of this session of the Pan-African Parliament. I'm very much aware, honorable members of the Pan-African Parliament, of your commitment and your determination to work towards the defense of the interests of the African people. That is why I would do all that is necessary during my term to give you the necessary support towards the realization of your objectives of peace, stability, development, and the strengthening of democracy, the rule of law in Africa, and ideals which are shared by your institution, your continental institution. Honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, on the last 18th of February, during the the Assembly of Heads of State and Government of the African Union, which held in Addis Ababa, the choice was made to my country, the Comoros, through my modest person, to preside the destiny of our continental institution for 2023. It is therefore the opportunity for me to use my presence here in this illustrious rostrum before this august assembly to renew my thanks for the confidence which has been bestowed on me by giving me this heavy but exalting task. Let me assure you and them of my commitment, my firm commitment, to work in direct collaboration with all the countries and institutions, as well as organizations, including the Pan-African Parliament, for greater peace and progress in our continent and across the world. Our common duty, as you are all aware, is to help our organization to attain its objectives as contained in its Agenda 2063. Thus, I'm very happy to see you here in your numbers at the opening of this session. And this is a testimony of the interest which you show as in the solidarity, fraternity, which constitutes the basics of our continental organization. Honorable members of the Parliament, let me use this opportunity to congratulate you for the remarkable work which you have been carrying out in favor of democracy, the rule of law, but also in the consolidation of our institutions. Thus, at a time when the world is changing, Africa has institutions which make it up, and these institutions must work hand in glove to be able to meet the challenges of the continent. Our continent, which as a matter of fact has a lot of natural resources, a youth ambitious, dynamic, and educated, could be one of the major stakes of the world in future. When we look at the continent, if we give them the appropriate conditions, we'll be able to promote socioeconomic and sustainable development in Africa. I'm therefore happy to see that after the implementation of NEPAD and the Agenda 2063, we have succeeded in setting up the African Continental Free Trade Area, and it has become our continental priority. The Assembly said that as a priority for my term, it should be the acceleration of this continental free trade zone. We should accelerate its process, and I would like to say that I'm reassured and comforted to see that the Parliament is ready and is of prime importance for our continent in its quest for economic development by establishing this free trade area of the African continent, which is the theme for this second session of the Pan-African Parliament. One of the founding fathers of the OAU, Kwame Nkrumah, said that Africa must unite. He said so in the 1960s, and to repeat his words, he said we must work together for our own development. As regards national projects, he said that it will be necessary for the countries to come together to foster mutual development. Today, decades afterwards, these words are indeed even more reasonable, because when you look at the integration of the African economy, it will make it possible in a record time to attain a level of development which will be very high. ZLECAf will make it possible for us to have a common market, and it will facilitate circulation of persons in order to deepen economic integration in the African continent, and this will be consistent with the African vision of an integrated Africa which is prosperous and peaceful, which will be led by its own citizens and would represent a dynamic force in the international sphere. Thus, by relying on this, our states rely on regional economic communities. Africa will be able to eliminate progressively the customs barriers and will be able to develop commercial trade in the African continent. Africa, therefore, has to be in the heart of economic development, which is currently going on in the world, especially as we have the natural resources and human resources, and we are capable of increasing our production and free trade intracontinental, but also with the rest of the world. We, as African nations, must be able to produce, stock, but consume also on the spot our primary resources if we are going to avoid the shortage of stocks of primary products, which indeed lead to famine on the continent. We must be able to consecrate our efforts with determination if we have to be represented in the international market. We have to work in our countries against unemployment and economic difficulties, which indeed lead to terrorism and other forms of destabilization. Thus, by implementing this free exchange area, this Pan-African Parliament, through this session, will agree that the challenges of our continent are taken into consideration, and constant efforts must be made by the effort towards the development of this market. And it is indeed of a particular character. Our development efforts should inter alia promote, for instance, the acceleration of the ratification of this AFTA, and there should be autonomy in the execution of its roadmap so as to foster regional integration, notably the free movement of persons, of goods and persons. I remain confident that our close collaboration will enable us to strengthen our parliament and make it more efficient and more visible in the eyes of the African people, and leading to more concrete results. Meanwhile, our efforts for greater prosperity cannot be sustained without peace and stability in our continent. It is worthy of note that apart from these terrorist threats, unconstitutional change of government, the war in Sudan has even come to worsen a security situation which was already difficult on our continent. Not only this war, creating chaos in this neighboring country may lead to destabilization of other countries, and with the inherent consequences which we know on the people concerned. We must, therefore, on this aspect, unite our efforts to convince the belligerent parties to agree to a ceasefire and agree to negotiations so that there will be a quick end to this crisis. Permit me to inform you in that regard that I'm in constant contact with the belligerent parties, and that I hope to convince them to agree to negotiations which will lead to an end to this fighting between brothers, which will not be take us anywhere further in our continent. With regard to the Ukrainian war, I discussed on telephone with the Ukrainian president, and I hope to do same with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, so that Africa should be able to make its contribution in the quest for a solution to this war, which has not only shaken the foundations of Europe, but has affected the entire world and particularly our continent. Your Excellency, the President of the Pan-African Parliament and honorable members of the Parliament, dear brothers and sisters, the African continent has a great future before it, in spite of all the challenges which it is facing. Let us face these challenges together and be united, so that our common will lead to peace and stability, as well as development in our continent. Before I end, permit me to respond to a question which was asked by the President of the Pan-African Parliament regarding the revenues of Comoros and its attitude towards anti-constitutional change of government, unconstitutional change of government. I beg your pardon. You are right when you say that our country today has 47 years of independence. For 20 years, the first years after its independence, there was political instability, as you are all aware, caused by Bob Denner, who assassinated 2 of our presidents and who even orchestrated the killing of another president. But together, we were able to find a solution to have political stability, which needs to be strengthened. But the results, Mr. President, I may not give you now, because that may be very expensive. Now, since our budget is not able to, your budget is not able to do the appropriate things, I would want to say that when you have the appropriate budget, you'll be able to do more. Africa has a culture of discussing amongst themselves, and that is where I decided to take support. That is discussions amongst the Comoran people. It is African way of dialogue, and as everyone knows, African problems should have African solutions. And I want to reassure you, as our brother Barack Obama said, yes, we can. Before I end, I wish you total success in your deliberations, and I would want to see this second session of the 6th legislature of the Pan-African Parliament contribute in the promotion of peace, stability, and development of Africa. There should be Africa with one voice. Long live Africa, and I thank you for your kind attention.
Oh yeah, this is great. And we can, I can now invite Honorable Gayo to give a vote of thanks.
Your Excellency, President of United Republic of Comoros, Excellency President of Pan-African Parliament, Chief Fortune Chirumbura, Honorable Speakers, Honorable Members of Pan-African Parliament, let me take this opportunity to thank His Excellency as the President of Comoros and the Chairperson of African Union Assembly, despite his tight schedule, who honored the invitation of Pan-African Parliament. May I ask you, Your Excellencies, to give him our big hand. Excellencies, also it's high time to thank our President of Pan-African Parliament, who did a great job to invite His Excellency, the President, to come here and to be with us. Thank you, Your Excellency, President of the Pan-African Parliament, Chief Fortune Chirumbura. Excellencies, Mr. President, Your Excellency, as you said, Pan-African Parliament is in a serious challenge, and we count on you. During your time, Pan-African Parliament will mitigate all that problems and will live in the expectation of people of Africa. Excellencies, since our establishment, Pan-African Parliament was expected to have legislative power, but unfortunately, almost 20 years, Pan-African Parliament didn't achieve that power. Of course, we will not expect, also, we will not load all this expectation on you in these 6-7 months, but we expect you will lay foundations, you will convince our head of states to be accessible to Pan-African Parliament, and also learning from Your Excellency to come to Pan-African Parliament, to address the Pan-African Parliament. We hope on that, Your Excellency, Pan-African Parliament, we are working with our counterparts, with European Parliament also. When we go to Europe, European parliamentarians, they have legislative power, which we don't have. Really, it lets down, not members, here we are, but people of Africa are not respected at that level as European parliamentarians are expected. Excellency, thank you for coming. We also, Africa, as you are aware of it, we are in serious food security because of war in Ukraine and Russia. The food, especially fertilizer, which is coming from Russia and Belarus, has skyrocketed up to 300%, which is not accessible, which cannot also Africa is not affording. Excellencies, European Parliament, European government, they subsidize their farmers, which is not the case in Africa. Africa can only do ask and plea Europeans to ease and to lift